China escalates its operations around Taiwan, Chinese military also deployed hypersonic anti-ship missiles.
The Philippines has just redrawn Asia's defense map. Once dismissed as a remote frontier, the Batanes Islands are now thrust into the spotlight as a frontline choke point in the clash of great powers. At the heart of this shift is the Mahatao Forward Operating Base, launched in August 2025, the biggest military installation ever built in the country's north. This isn't just about defending territory or watching sea lanes. It's Manila planting a flag of sovereignty in the Luzon Strait, one of the world's most strategic corridors. Why now? The answer lies in the Taiwan flashpoint. As China's navy grows bolder and more present in nearby waters, Manila can no longer afford to stay on the sidelines. Mahatao signals that the Philippines is stepping onto the board as a real player, directly tied into alliance dynamics with the US, Australia, and potentially Japan. The geography speaks for itself. The Luzon Strait isn't just another patch of water. It's a narrow but vital deep-water gateway, linking the South China Sea with the Pacific. Whoever controls it shapes the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. That's what makes Batanes more than just islands. It's a tripwire. Any strike here wouldn't be isolated. It would trigger a wider war. The stakes are as high as they come. Stronger deterrence and tighter alliances on one hand, but also the risk of Chinese pushback, economic retaliation, and missteps that could spiral into conflict. Yet, the symbolism is unmistakable. Mahatao isn't a remote outpost anymore. It's a frontline fortress in the contest for the Indo-Pacific. For centuries, the Batanes Islands were viewed as beautiful, but peripheral, windswept lands known for the resilience of the Ivatan people, not for military strategy. Manila's defense focus was elsewhere. Mindanao's insurgencies, Luzon's defense lines, and American bases at Subic and Clark. Batanes was left with little more than its rugged terrain and postcard views. That indifference began to fade in the 2000s as China's navy modernized and gray zone tactics crept into the South China Sea. Slowly, the Philippines started rotating small naval and marine teams into Batanes, testing what forward presence might look like. The turning point came in 2018, when Philippine and US Marines carried out their first joint reconnaissance on Mavulis Island, the northernmost tip of the archipelago. It was symbolic, but it sent a powerful message. Batanes was no longer just a remote community. It was becoming a frontline outpost. By 2022, with southern insurgencies winding down, the AFP shifted focus northward. Marines trained not for jungle warfare, but for maritime awareness, tracking foreign ships, monitoring the Luzon Strait, and rehearsing defenses across one of Asia's most critical sea lanes. Analysts began framing Batanes as part of the first island chain, the strategic arc from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines, long seen by Washington as a barrier to Chinese expansion. By the mid-2020s, as US-China rivalry sharpened, Batanes had morphed from a forgotten edge into a chessboard square with global stakes. And in 2025, Mahatao Base made that transformation permanent. Built on Batan Island, just 120 miles south of Taiwan, Mahatao sits directly across the Luzon Strait's Bashi Channel, one of the most contested waterways on Earth. It's the route Chinese subs use to slip into the Pacific, the corridor for US reinforcements in a Taiwan crisis, and a vital artery of global trade. By anchoring a forward base here, the Philippines has positioned itself at the crossroads of peace and conflict. Mahatao's missions are threefold. First, hard defense, equipped with radar towers, hardened shelters, and supply depots to deter intrusions and feed data into allied networks. Second, maritime awareness, finally giving Manila eyes on the constant flow of foreign vessels in its northern waters. And third, disaster response, sitting in the path of the world's strongest typhoons and atop active seismic faults. Batanes has long been disaster-prone. Mahatao doubles as a hub for food, medicine, and relief supplies, with runways and docks ready for emergency deployments. That dual purpose, defense and disaster relief, is no accident. It sends a message. To Filipinos, Mahatao is not just a fortress, but also a lifeline. To allies, it shows Manila as a responsible stakeholder in regional security. And to Beijing, it's a quiet but firm statement. The Philippines is defending its ground by its own choice, not under foreign coercion. Every radar mast, every supply depot, every reinforced dock at Mahatao serves two roles: deterrence in war, relief in disaster. That balance makes it harder to paint the base as a provocation and easier to present it as a necessity. The age of neglect in Batanes is over. With Mahatao, Manila has moved its northern frontier from postcard to playmaker, from periphery to pivot. The Philippines is no longer watching from the sidelines. In the Luzon Strait, it's stepping onto the front line of history. For years, Mavulis Island, manned by small detachments of Marines and running mostly on solar power, stood as a symbol, proof that the Philippines hadn't abandoned its northernmost frontier, but it was always fragile, isolated, hard to supply, and never able to host a real fighting force. Mahatao changes everything. Unlike Mavulis, Mahatao is built to last. It's bigger, better connected, and designed to anchor the entire Batanes chain. Together, they form a layered shield. Mavulis is the forward lookout, Mahatao as the operational backbone that gives the defense real staying power. This isn't just about the Philippines defending its turf. It's about credibility with allies who see Batanes as a critical piece of the first island chain, the defensive arc that stretches from Japan through Taiwan down to the Philippines. And Mahatao's opening can't be separated from the looming shadow overhead, the Taiwan flashpoint. Look north, and the Luzon Strait has become one of Asia's busiest, most contested waters. Chinese Coast Guard cutters, swarms of militia boats, even full-plan strike groups cut through it routinely. Surveillance planes sweep above, submarines slip quietly below, and warships shuttle between the South China Sea and the open Pacific. For Manila, this isn't a distant concern. It's right at its front door. In April 2025, AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner Jr. told his northern troops bluntly, "Don't just prepare for harassment, prepare for full-scale war." His warning was unambiguous. The Philippines has no offensive designs, but it must be ready for the day conflict spills across the strait. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. has echoed that message again and again. If China and the US clash over Taiwan, the Philippines cannot sit out. Geography simply won't allow it. The distance makes it clear. Kaohsiung, Taiwan's southern city, is just a 40-minute flight from the northern Philippines. Batanes is only 120 miles from Taiwan's tip. Neutrality is not an option. There's also a human urgency. More than 200,000 Filipinos live and work in Taiwan, one of the largest foreign communities there. In a war, bringing them home safely would be a massive challenge. Bases like Mahatao could serve as staging grounds for evacuation flights and humanitarian missions, turning the Luzon Strait into both a frontline and a lifeline. Beijing, of course, has reacted sharply. China has condemned Manila's growing military ties with Washington, especially the possibility of missiles and advanced surveillance systems stationed in Batanes. State media rail that the Philippines is acting like an American pawn and fanning instability. But the louder the warnings grow, the clearer the reality. Batanes is no longer a forgotten outpost. It's now a direct factor in China's strategic calculations. Mahatao is more than local defense. It's a keystone in a wider alliance system that's rapidly hardening across the Indo-Pacific. At the center is the United States, Manila's oldest ally, which has shifted its exercises and deployments squarely toward a Taiwan crisis. The annual Balikatan drills, once about counterinsurgency and disaster relief, now rehearse maritime choke point battles and gray zone confrontations. In 2025, for the first time, those exercises took place in Batanes itself. US and Filipino troops stood literally shoulder to shoulder on the edge of a potential war zone. The message was unmistakable. The front line has moved north, And the Philippines is no longer just watching history. It's standing in the middle of it. The US Marines have already brought some of their most advanced firepower to the Batanes Islands. Systems like HIMARS rocket launchers, the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, and mid-range missile platforms capable of striking targets across the TAIWAN Strait. These deployments aren't permanent, at least not yet, but they send a clear message. The Philippines is no longer just a bystander. It's now a cornerstone in America's strategy to lock down the first island chain and deny China free rein in the Pacific. For US planners, Batanes and the LUZON Strait form a natural kill box, an area where Allied forces could detect, track, and, if pushed, neutralize Chinese ships trying to slip into open waters. But this shift isn't just about hardware. Training has gone local. US Marines are working side by side with their Philippine counterparts to master littoral defense. Small units moving quickly, spreading out across islands, blending into coastal terrain, and rehearsing ambushes with missiles that can hold even China's biggest warships at risk. For Philippine Marines, long trained for jungle patrols and counterinsurgency, this is a battlefield transformation. They're pivoting to sea denial missions, preparing to fight in an environment where mobility, speed, and precision matter more than numbers. Australia has also stepped into this northern theatre in a way not seen before. In mid-2025, Exercise Aolon brought more than 3,600 Aussie and Filipino troops together for amphibious drills, with the US, Japan, and others observing closely. This wasn't just symbolic. Canberra now sees the Luzon Strait as part of its own security, tied to freedom of navigation and the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. The strategy here is straightforward: choke China's access to the Pacific. If Beijing ever launched an operation against Taiwan, its navy would need to push through either the Miyako Strait near Japan, heavily monitored, or the Luzon Strait near the Philippines. By reinforcing Batanes with bases, Allied troops, and missile systems, Washington and Manila are closing off one of Beijing's last reliable escape routes. For China, that's a nightmare scenario. For Manila, it's both reassurance and risk. That's because the Luzon Strait isn't just another patch of water. It's one of the Indo-Pacific's most decisive choke points, linking the South China Sea with the Pacific. Whoever controls it controls Beijing's naval lifeline. For the US and its allies, that same geography offers a containment opportunity, a chance to trap China inside the first island chain. And Batanes sits right on top of it, just 120 miles from Taiwan. That proximity makes the islands a tripwire. Any hostile action against them would almost certainly trigger the US-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, pulling Washington into the fight. In other words, touching Batanes means touching the alliance itself. That's why Manila is reinforcing the islands, not just to protect sovereignty, but to deter Beijing by making sure any strike escalates immediately. For Washington, defending Batanes is also about credibility. If the US failed to act in a crisis here, it would shake confidence across the entire Indo-Pacific, from Tokyo to Taipei to Canberra. In this way, the windswept Batanes chain has gone from overlooked to indispensable. With the new Mahatao base as its anchor, the Philippines has planted itself firmly on the front line. The benefits are real: stronger deterrence, deeper alliances, better disaster response. But so are the risks: economic retaliation, maritime harassment, or worse, becoming a target in the very conflict Manila wants to prevent. The Luzon Strait is no longer just a shipping lane. It's becoming a militarized frontier, a fault line where US-China rivalry could flare into open conflict. Every radar ping, every patrol, every missile drill now carries the weight of escalation. For the Philippines, that means a new reality. It is no longer a peripheral player. In the next great power showdown, it will stand squarely on the front line. Japan, though still bound by its pacifist constitution, is edging closer to Manila. From maritime surveillance to early warning systems and disaster relief, Tokyo sees Batanes as a natural arena for deeper cooperation. If these efforts expand into a trilateral or even quadrilateral network with the US and Australia, the Philippines would be locked more firmly into an Indo-Pacific coalition designed to check Beijing's rise. The upside is real: tech transfers, stronger infrastructure, and military capacity building. But the cost is just as real. Manila becomes a permanent player in a contest it can't walk away from. That's the crossroads the Philippines faces. Mahatao isn't just another military base. It's a statement, a symbol of the country's growing weight in the Indo-Pacific and the responsibility that comes with it. Whether Mahatao serves as a shield that deters aggression or a magnet that invites conflict depends on how skillfully Manila manages alliances, balances diplomacy with deterrence, and navigates the storm around it. What was once a windswept, forgotten frontier is now a forward-operating hub. Batanes is no longer just geography, it's intent, a declaration that the Philippines will not leave its northern edge undefended, that it's willing to plant its flag on the front line of US-China rivalry. For decades, Manila could afford to ignore these islands, but geography has changed that. Just 120 miles from Taiwan, straddling the Luzon Strait, Batanes is now in the center of any future conflict scenario. If war erupts in the Taiwan Strait, Batanes won't be a spectator, it will be a stage. That's the hard truth. By fortifying Mahatao, the Philippines is preparing for a war it prays will never come. Neutrality isn't an option in one of the most volatile corridors of the Indo-Pacific, but the risks are high. More pressure from Beijing, exposure to coercion, and the constant danger of miscalculation. The challenge for Manila is clear: turn Batanes into both a shield and a lifeline, a deterrent strong enough to discourage aggression, yet flexible enough to provide humanitarian aid when disaster strikes, without becoming the spark that ignites a wider war. Mahatao is more than concrete and radar towers. It's the Philippines' strategic awakening. A bold signal that the nation is done being a passive player at the edges of great power rivalry. Batanes now stands at the heart of the fight over freedom of navigation, sovereignty, and the rules-based order. The stakes could not be higher. In defending its northern frontier, the Philippines is helping shape the future balance of power in the Indo-Pacific itself. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into today's defining security issues.